He's such a good boy. Oh my God.
I'm going to have to carry him out of Coble Suit because he's going to try to.
He's the star. Tell us.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So you have a bunch of kids and some pets too?
Bunch of kids, 2 pets.
Oh, wow.
Kids, pets,
Yeah.
commitments.
Yeah, I know. You're one of the only other people like me who like you have like a career.
Yeah.
And kids.
Yeah.
And you go out and do comedy.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of us out there.
I know. It's really refreshing to talk to other people that have kids doing comedy because there are not a lot of them. And I feel like when you start talking to people who don't have kids a lot, they're like, oh, so you can never do anything. And it's like, yeah, no, that's why you see me all the time. Because I can never do anything.
Do you have shows that you watch?
Yeah, I do the background show thing.
Okay. Because that's how people ask me how I have time. And I'm like, I don't watch shows.
I don't.
That helps.
Yeah.
I don't drink booze. I don't watch shows.
Yeah.
I don't know how to relax yet. I haven't
Yeah.
learned that.
I always have to be doing like 4 things at a time. I'll put on like I think you should leave and leave it in the background, and then just like write or do schoolwork or whatever.
Yeah, like ambient video.
Yeah, but it's just Tim Robinson, like
Let's see what these
being
levels are at.
obnoxious.
Is there anywhere I can look and see where my mic's at? Over?
Yeah, it's as long as
I'm the middle one.
Yeah, it doesn't. As long as you don't clip, I normalize them all after. So the size of the.
So err on the side of low rather than high.
No, you should just be yourself. Just try to keep it a consistent distance, like
Equidistant.
Because you can do headphones, but I feel like headphones makes it this weird thing.
Yeah.
So this is like a little closer to just normal hanging out.
What are you sipping on right there?
This is black tea with oat milk. It's a little bit
Dude,
sweet.
it's so good. Do you
It's the
want to try
house.
this?
It's the house
It's
drink.
really good.
You should have one after your Coke Zero.
Okay. Oh, that is good.
Yeah.
So you guys drove up for this podcast. That's amazing. That's This is like it's like a real show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is my show. It's like I don't have to do like a brewery show. So thank you for coming up.
Thank you.
I'm
for
just so
doing
goddamn
this.
impressed with your house.
I know, it's really nice.
You should do a panorama shot of your house after
Yeah.
that show. And I don't know if this is all getting clipped out. I heard you chop off the beginning.
Yeah, I
you know?
usually just chop off the beginning, or I say I'm gonna go into, and then I just don't, and it just all stays in.
Okay.
But yeah, Emily did all this. She did all the flooring and like the cabinets and everything. So it's a very like creative house.
I'm really into this microwave.
Yeah.
Like, look at this. Ugh. Yeah.
So Zlata, who do you know that should quit comedy? Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's start off with a bang.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you guys like? You're both in South Carolina, but you're not from. Where do you guys live in the same place?
No, I actually live in Rock Hill right now.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I grew up in Columbia. That's where I started doing comedy, was in Columbia, and then we moved to Pelzer, which is right outside of Greenville, like 4 years ago. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
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 So you guys, am I right in remembering that both of you guys like started comedy and then you kind of stopped and then or took time off and then started again?
Yeah, I've taken one extended break was because of the pandemic, but before that I also took a break. I actually started in like December of 2016, which is a little embarrassing because I feel like it should be better. But when I came back after the pandemic, I feel like that was the first stretch to now that I'm like really hitting mics regularly, and I just went through a breakup about 2 months ago. And I've been hitting more mics since then because less obligations and stuff. So.
Yeah.
I feel like there always gets to a point in doing comedy where it's like when you have done it for like 5 years, because I started in 2016 too. And when you get to like 5 years, you're like, yeah, I've been doing this for like 5 years. And then when you get to the longer point, you're like, people are like, how long have you been doing comedy? It's like 8 years.
Yeah,
8
you start
years.
rounding
Get a little
You
sheepish
don't wanna tell
about how
anybody.
long you've been doing it. You're like, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, around 10 you start like rounding down. You're like,
Yeah.
Let's talk about you. I've noticed just watching this podcast that I'm a big numbers guy. Like I just like the count things, but I don't know that that's helpful for comedy. or not. Like I just did my 921st stand-up set. I've been
Nice.
been counting them like a maniac.
No, that's great.
That reminds me of one of my bits.
Yeah.
With, where Wilt Chamberlain talks about having had sex with 20,000 women. And then I just say, like, who the hell counts that high about anything? And yeah, you're approaching that phenomenon right there with just the. Yeah, I have no fucking clue about any of my numbers about that.
I think there's something satisfying being able to like look at that though, because I started doing a thing this year after New Year where I have a piece of paper on my wall where I write down every time I do a show, and it's very satisfying because even when it's like not that big of a show or like that successful or anything, it's like, oh, like I went out and did things this year. It's nice. Yeah.
It's like with kids, they're like, make a sticker chart to show, and it's like that. It's like if you want more shows, like do a visual like chart of it, and then I think it can get more shows that way too.
It feels
it's almost like vision boardy or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, manifesting.
It's very rewarding to just be like, well, I've been putting some work into this. Like it's not just a thing I don't care about, because it's very easy to like kind of fall into the slump and just be like, oh, I'm not doing anything with this. This isn't like worth my time. And then it's just like, no, I've actually put a lot of effort into this.
Yeah, I saw you have a bunch of shows. Like, so do you send out the emails and stuff? I do. I'm big on like, you gotta email people. You gotta ask to be booked.
So no, I need to. I think this upcoming run of shows that I'm doing, I got very lucky because people kind of all asked me at the same time.
Yeah.
But I really just try to like say yes to anything new that people are asking me to do, because every time that I go do that, you end up like meeting somebody else, and they're like, well, I'd love to have you up here, because every time you go to a new place, even after doing it for so long, someone is inevitably like, I've never seen you before. And it's like, that's because I don't come. So
yeah,
it is weird with like with comedy as far as like doing what you enjoy versus like what's going to get you on more shows and stuff like that, because like there's definitely mics that I like that there's literally no return as far as like getting on shows, but it's just like such a like fun mic to like hang out and talk and like work on bits and stuff like that. And I think you kind of have to like be mindful of like the ratio or the distribution of shows and mics you do that are like, I don't know, this one's for me, this one's for like actually like people seeing me and stuff like that, because like I don't know. I don't have to like get into details about that. I think I know what I mean.
There's like treating it like a business. I think you have to doing a little bit of that can help, because you get like more, you get out more, and you get hopefully paid more. But yeah, it's also like ultimately you want to be like an artist, so you can like the odd is like, I just love that room, and it's like I don't expect to ever get like booked from a set there, but it's just like the vibe and how it informs my material. Like they'll laugh at different things there.
That's how Coffee Underground is in Greenville, because it's like, it's my favorite mic, but it's like you never know how the audience is going to be. I like this. It's my favorite place to bomb. Yeah, because it's the most comfortable room to bomb in, because you can just do whatever and try new stuff, and it's like it doesn't feel awful when it doesn't work.
Coffee's the best room I've ever been in for comedy.
Yeah, a lot of people say that.
Yeah, it's like a black box room, and like there's the lights, and it's very dark, and like it's just you on the stage. The stage is like slightly elevated, but it's like not There's like nothing extra in the room, and it's like can probably hold like 60 people if you like cram it
too, right?
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, me and Zlata have talked privately about how like there's jokes we never would have even tried or like had the courage to try if it weren't for that room, because like it's just so comfortable, and like when the audience is good, it's really, really good. And
it's good to have a home-based mic like that. Like I love what you said about like a place you can bomb. I mean, that's how I feel about the Odd, is like it's kind of like fun to bomb there. And I hope to get to where I can be like, it's fun to bomb anywhere or more places, but like the more out of my home base I go, like I think I'm real confident, and then I'll go to some new city where I don't know anybody, and you walk in and you're like, shit, I still.
Like, this is the only impression I've left.
Yeah. Have you ever
bad? You're like, fuck.
Have you ever had a crypto mic as far as kryptonite mic, like a mic you just like for some reason just can't bring the goods?
I've definitely had shows like that. I'm trying to think if there's like a mic. I mean, I feel like that all the mics, honestly, in some way or another. But then you kind of, if you keep coming back enough to a mic, you kind of figure out how to, I guess, just be comfortable with bombing in that room. And then then you're kind of invincible. Like once it's such a short set. I think if you can enjoy bombing, you can defeat it that way.
My friend from Columbia, Christian Williams, who's a very funny Columbia comic, introduced me to the phrase he calls bombing eating your veggies.
And
Healthy
bombing.
Yeah, and he's like, it's good for you. You have to do it. It's good for you. And I think ever since he used that phrase, something clicked. And so now it feels a lot better because it's like, oh, okay, this isn't something that, because it's one of those things where you walk away from bombing and you're like, oh, everybody bombs, it's comedy, but you still feel like shit. And I've been working really hard this year to not care as much about it not working, because it's still I don't know, especially if you have a couple weeks where you do really well in a row, you almost want to be like, well, maybe I'll just do the jokes that I know are going to work. Like it's easy to try to start a new joke, and then when it goes awry, you're like, well, I'm just going to get into my material that I know is going to land. So.
Also, just training the muscles of embracing the silence and getting to a point where if this isn't your demographic or your crowd, or for some reason something weird happened where for some reason people showed up late, so half the room didn't get warmed up, and then you're about to go on. It's really good to not be scared of bombing, or the fact that you're still persevering and they're still listening to you, to where you get to the jokes that line up with the audience. They will laugh because they're still on your side, or still oh yeah, if you're just up there floundering because you're bombing, then even if you get to a joke that they might not laugh that much because you've lost you've lost them.
It's just weird now. They're like, oh, everyone's squirming, you're all sweaty,
mouth dry.
I had one of those last 4th of July in Knoxville, which is my parents and my sister were there. Have never seen me before, and it was so empty. And the show was it was the third hour of it, and I was headlining at the end, and it was just empty except for them, and it was so bad. And my mouth got all weird. I couldn't even make the sounds good. It was just it kind of fell apart. It was the only time my mom's seen me do comedy. She's like, this is what it is. I'm like, this is literally the worst.
It's always the one time people come and see you, and it's just fuck.
That's why I always wanted to be strangers. I would rather do comedy for strangers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to do well, but even if Emily comes, I'm like, I hope I don't bomb tonight. This will be the one time she sees me for a while. And then
Zlata just did a show for her husband.
Justin came all the way to Asheville to see me at Burger Bar, and I just I just ate it so hard, and it was just
it could be.
Oh, he's gonna divorce me on the way home.
So we need to have a talk when we get home. I don't want you driving while we have this conversation.
I thought you were good at this.
We can't be together anymore. I was
say, well, if you would have come to Coffee Underground 4 weeks ago, the 6 people there thought I was great.
He
just looks at you, Zlata. I want you to know that you embarrassed the shit out of me tonight.
Yeah, Burger Bar is one of those rooms where I think I felt I've seen it warms up slow and it can be empty, but I've done it I guess a few times, and it's kind of if you did it again and you knew that experience, you could probably come back and it's almost with shows like that. I went to JJ's in Chattanooga and did a show there. I did a longer feature set at their mic, and I just really planned on doing my material, and it was just all comics being weird and loose, and I didn't feel like I did very well. I felt like it was stiff because I was trying to do my best jokes, and if I had it to do over again, I would do just all new stuff I'd thought about that week. I almost think Burger Bar is one of those places where it's just to try a bunch of new shit and be go off the rails is what it needs. You know what I mean? Versus trying to actually do good jokes there.
It's a weird pressure when there's a lot of comics there too, especially if they've seen a lot of the stuff that you do, because you're not going to get the genuine laugh from people who know the punchline. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's already kind of false.
But it's I don't know. I feel like last week when we went up there, I had that moment where it was just like it didn't. The first thing that I said didn't land, and then I immediately was like. Like
water.
Where's
my water?
Nope, I've already decided that I'm just gonna do this the rest of the time. Like,
You're not giving anybody a handshake because this shit is
Yeah.
so like clammy
So
and gross. Just becoming a gross like that
Just
feeling.
wiping on your leg.
Yeah.
But that's the best. I mean, like, have you gotten to where you can kind of bounce back and forgive your? Because that's what I've been really working on is like forgiving myself for
You
that.
mean during
being
the
like,
set or after the set?
After, but hopefully more during. But like that's why I count the sets because it's like when I'm 921, I'm like if I'm going to do 1,000 sets, like you would want some of them to go that way because if they were all good, you would not be nearly as like grow and be good. So thinking of like the larger counting has helped me like be more forgiving after, you know.
it's definitely easier to reflect on it when you do poorly because I have got a little journal. And I'll write down like how each show went and who was on it and how long and like
Put it next to the vision
What did you
boards.
write about me about our show together at Burger Bar? What did you say about me?
the next Tim Robinson.
Oh wow! Okay, thank you.
Well, no, it's very self-centered. It's
Okay.
it's not about the other people. It's about this is about me, Coble.
When you introduced it, you made it kind of sound like it was about everybody. You know?
Well, because I'll try to like remember who all was on it, so I know what like the dynamic was and stuff. But it's definitely like when you're in a new room and it's like, oh, that went really well. You don't really have a lot to say about it because you're just kind of like, oh, that did great.
Yeah, you're just buzzing from it. Like you don't need to.
You already have the like the endorphins from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you do shitty, you're like, okay.
a little dopamine
This is
too.
what I think went wrong. Like this is
Yeah.
what I should have done. You know, this is what I could do better next time. But then I always feel a little pretentious like doing that anyways because I'm like, I don't know. I'm not qualified
Yeah.
to talk
Comedy's a
about
little-
this.
It's all a little pretentious.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's
podcast,
all
like, this is
fucking.
the idea that people should like listen to us like talking. It's
yeah.
all fucking pretentious.
Well, it's just like it's
Usually
hard to
in
know
my
if you're
opinion.
like have imposter syndrome or Dunning-Kruger effect or like a combination of both because it's like there is such a like no like with like if you're like a chemist or a physicist or something, it's very like objective who knows their shit and who
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
with
yeah.
comedy, it's so abstract
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like subjective and everything that like being in like there's people that think they're super informed that don't know shit, and there's people that think that they're like imposters that really do know a lot, and so it's like very difficult to discern where you are on that. And I
Yeah.
think that like everyone probably has some sort of mixture of both of like there's areas where they probably think they know more than they do and areas where they know more than they even realize. And I think that's like very difficult to nail down introspectively. So
Yeah, that's what I like about this podcast is like the three of our minds together, we can kind of maybe get like a broader, like a more true view of what it is. Because it is like you can watch a show, you and another comedian who you respect, and then after you totally disagree about like which jokes were the best, who did the best.
Yeah.
that was bad, and it's like I don't know. It's weird. It is very subjective, and I like that about it. Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, I really like. So I've been listening to this podcast a lot, and
wow.
I really like that it's like there are all these people that I personally will be like, oh, they're so funny, and when you ask them similar questions, they all have different outlooks on it.
Yeah.
And that's like not a conversation that you can have organically out at comedy because what ends up happening is you just have like a circle of 15 people and they're talking over each other and they don't. They're waiting for their chance.
You
to talk.
select the creme de la creme.
Yeah,
Yeah, come
of course.
on. And
of course.
I've been saying creme de la creme a lot
I
more
like it.
recently.
Just roll off it.
I'm sorry. I
Have
think
you got
that's
it in a bit yet? Because
no. That's
it was delicious the way you just said it. I was like,
No,
say more about this.
No,
Creme de la creme.
that's someone else's bit. God, it was Dan Licata who opened for Joe Pera had a thing where he's just like, yeah, I've been trying to get into saying creme de la creme a lot. And I thought that was funny.
One thing you mentioned when you were talking Coble earlier was like about the silences too, being comfortable with the silence. And that's one thing I think you do a really awesome job of is like you take pauses on stage, which is I think to me, if you listen to the podcast, I think I always say that like 1,000 times. I love pauses.
Yeah.
And just like chill energy. I think to me that's like a really confident thing to do.
Well, I think sometimes it's just like you just said some. I do. I mean, I don't think I'm like super alternative, but I think I get a little weird up there sometimes, and I think sometimes it's like the audience is like, okay, that's funny, but I'm not sure why. And when you give them that pause and that kind of look of just like hanging in there and just like not being like, oh, that bombed, but oh, I'm letting you sit with it and like that's absurd and I'm gonna act absurd. They start laughing after the fact, and like they're laughing at you pausing because it's just kind of an absurd thing to just pause and say nothing and stand still. But also like the after effects of the joke that didn't really hit, but is now it's kind of the embers start burning a little bit, I guess. I'm not sure. When I started comedy, Greg Giraldo was my favorite comedian, and I really wanted to be that like smart, fast-paced guy that was just bang, bang, bang,
Joke
and everything's
writer.
hilarious.
You like Attell?
I do like Attell. I haven't listened to as much. I mean, Giraldo, I was obsessed and super, super smart. He was like a Harvard lawyer and everything, and I wanted to be that, but I just don't think that's me at all. And I started getting really obsessed with Norm Macdonald a few years ago.
He's my favorite.
And I think that's where I was like, oh, it's okay to like really slow down and take pauses and like let shit sit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hate it. I fucking hate pausing. It feels bad.
Hey, you keep it up. I mean, that's kind of you have energy though.
I probably should pause though, because it's like I feel like it's also one of the things you were talking about. I think with PD was how like when you have a longer set, it helps a lot because you
Right.
slow it down
Yeah.
and like let them finish reacting to the first thing that you said before you go to the second one. I'm like, no, I gotta fill every moment of silence with something. It doesn't matter if it's good. Well, let's just move on to the next thing.
Yeah, Petey was saying like little Terminators, like if you're doing 5-minute sets, you're just like bam, 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 because you want to get them all in. But yeah, over like pacing it for like longer, I think it could be nice. But sometimes it can go wrong. Like I did a show a few weeks ago that was like the hardest bomb I've had in like a year. And it just wasn't good the whole time, but everybody was approaching it by being like, I'm just going to get up and I'm going to plow through. And they were like jumping and shouting. And I feel like, well, nobody's laughing. And like, I'm actually going to slow this down and get into these pauses. And I think that's how we're going to get, but it did not work at all. It was like just the pauses without the laughs, and then it was like the end. So it never really. Then I was like, oh, I probably should have just like yelled and jumped around.
I love those shows where like everyone's bombing and you're waiting to go up, and then you have like this false sense of confidence or delusion, whatever you want to call it. You're kind of like coping with the fact that this is about to be so painful. Yeah. So you're like,
lying to
I've
yourself.
I've figured out what needs to happen.
I got this.
I'm gonna do this, and that's gonna win them over. And then you just bomb, and then it's like, oh, I was just like, I was just self-defense mechanism happening in my mind.
Even though everyone bombed, I was going to
be the guy.
Right. But you kind of like, you need a little delusion. I think like if you're not a little bit delusional, you won't make it, you know?
Yeah.
There needs to be some of that.
I feel like I'm almost like superstitious at this point when it comes to performing, where it's like the worse I feel before I go up, the better I'm going to do. Because it's like every time I'm too confident and I'm like, this is going to be fine. This is going to be great. It's like that's when it just goes to shit. And it's just like, oh, they didn't like me at all. Not just my performance. They don't like me fundamentally as a person.
It's hard to get out of that one.
Yeah.
You know, like, can I make them hate me so much that it wraps around to like again?
You're not a very political comedian at all, are you? You don't do much.
I don't do like any divisive
comedy
stuff. Like I did a long set at Kava Bar, and I did this joke that I was like, you know, we should like not only make abortions illegal again, but we should like incentivize them so you get paid. It's like it's $1,000 not to
tax
keep it.
credit,
And we like
or
raise that so we get the population. So you know, I get ideas for that, but yeah, I guess not. I don't know.
I was talking to Zlata earlier about how like I'm not
pretty clean, I think.
Yeah. You don't have an axe to grind or anything like that. You just all right. I was talking to Zlata earlier saying that like I don't do that much political humor, but I feel like when there's conservatives in the audience, they can like smell the liberal on me. And I don't really know what that is. It's the glasses. It's the
take the glasses off.
Oh yeah.
Your button.
Then
down
I won't
is
be able to
too
see
fun.
that they're not laughing.
Too creative.
Too fun with the button.
He's
Little
got
down.
like creative
artsy,
ideas in his
fartsy,
head.
yeah.
Yeah.
This guy.
No,
Yeah.
it's weird. Like,
I'm wearing a tie-dye shirt with
I
sunglasses.
know,
so
out
yeah.
of control.
Like it's,
What are you
obviously
guys doing?
Not a gun
I got
person.
little cloakers.
Oh, I like that. I didn't notice that earlier.
Sorry, what were you?
I feel like it's weird when it's I don't like to judge audiences just based off of looking at the demographics anymore, because there have been a lot of times where, like, I used to get so nervous doing my jokes in front of like older people because I was like, they're not going to be interested in any of this. And then like 3 times back to back, I had like really good shows where it was like the one in Lexington where it was like the more conservative room.
Yeah,
And
I would think that they would
it's
love
like-
you.
well,
know?
it's just
You're
just
a mom, mullet mom.
Yeah,
I mean,
pull the
who
mom
doesn't want mullet
card.
mom?
That's it. And I try
What
so
if Dollar
hard
General
not
was
to.
the town? Like that's like how you got them like
Listen,
say those 2 things, and
but
then
that
just,
gets so like there are places that I've done that where they're like on board for that, and then when I keep going with like the other half of like kind of dog and Pelzer or whatever, they're like immediately like, you're not even from here. You can't talk shit about Pelzer the way that you are, and it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll just talk about having anxiety.
what if you yelled that back at him? Just what you just said, like you're not even. If you did a mean impression of him being that way, I wonder if that would get him back.
I feel there's so many things that when I get off of the show, it's like, oh, well, I should have just done this, and like they probably would have eaten that up. But I feel like I'm so I'm really neurotic when it comes to what I'm going to perform. Like, not very many things that I say on stage are not planned. Like, I practice in my car. I practice like out loud and like write it down to the word with little parentheses that are like, raise your eyebrows here.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm trying to get better about like, maybe you should just have normal human reactions on stage, but it never goes well when I do that.
Going back to the thing about them pushing back on the Pelzer thing, you're like, I was born in a communist country. I have every right.
Yeah, they would love that.
I mean, if you did that at like the Odd, they would love it. There are places that they definitely would love.
I love the Odd so much.
That's great.
I love the Odd.
Yeah.
But that is weird. Like I think it's a cool way to do it though. It's like you have like a really strong act. Like I mean, I like hearing your jokes like multiple times. You know, like you can like perform them with feeling, and like the words are like just right. So it seems cool to try. Like I'm also trying to get more off script and been working on that. But I think it's really you have that up your sleeve. Like I'm doing like a 20-minute clean set this week. It's somewhere in Kingsport. It'll probably be like older people, but that gig will pay for like going like Atlanta and not making any money at all.
What do you?
It's like that's kind of pressing.
I think
play
you're
on
about to
the
ask
clean
the
act.
same thing.
What's considered a clean set?
Yeah.
Oh man, I love this topic because it's like it's really not as written as they say.
Like TV clean.
Like when what I've found is they usually, if you get specific, they say PG-13. That's one word term they use, and then another thing they say is like no. Like what do they say? Profanity, graphic sexual content, or drugs. But I found like you can hint at those things.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be like just talking about like describing like anal sex or some crazy thing, but they say that because people come through that have done that in the past and really upset them. So I found if you get them on board with like, hey, I'm a dad and Asheville sure is goofy, then you could be like, kind of get into those things, and nobody really. It's really more of like a trust thing.
Yeah.
It's not as explicit as they say.
It's like I guess it's. I feel like they don't want like shock value where it's just like some comics. I feel like they do the thing where they're just like, oh, the joke is that it's so obscene, and it's like, but that's not a joke. Like
they don't
you're
want
just
you if you're that. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to have written some actual jokes with
Right. Yeah.
But the stuff that's shocking is honestly like makes me laugh the hardest a lot of the time too.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't really do that, but I do have like reverence for it when it's done well. But I think it's like why not be able to work in as many different rooms as possible? And I think like getting 30 clean is a really good goal because then you can do all those gigs. You have that. It's like a mechanical, more like Seinfeldian way of doing it. But then you can still be a weirdo. You can still like go off on these psychedelic journeys and at the at the Kava bar. But you kind of like have that compass. You know what like a corporate gig would need to have, and I think it's like cool to have, and it's like very few Asheville comedians can even work clean. So if you can work clean, you can get opportunities.
Right.
Like PG.
It's definitely a great career move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying too. Where like if I was
What am
like
I
only
saying?
doing like corporate gigs and stuff. You were saying earlier like you got to balance between.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think mind reading is just happening. I'm like that
No,
one
no,
thing
yeah.
from earlier. But
Yeah, I've
We're
said
all
a
on the
lot.
same page.
I've said a lot.
like I don't want to just be some clean comic for old people. Like I definitely like to me it's like the odd and these weirder rooms is like really where the like my life's work is as far as like being an artist and getting your weird self out.
I feel that way about like I was talking to you about this in the car where it's like I don't want to do a lot of jokes about like having kids, and people like multiple people have said stuff to me where they're like, well, I bet you get lots of material from your kids, and it's like, yeah, I don't want to be like a momic, you know what I mean? Like it's like I don't want to be like, oh, she's the one with all the kids, like it's like
I have a lot of kids.
I know, but I
All the kids.
have this like weird like sense of pride when people see me as a comic first and then like afterwards they're like, you have 4 kids, and I'm like, yeah. You couldn't tell because I was cool. And because I look 12. So that's it's kind of it's nice like having the flexibility with your material being like, well, it's not like vulgar, but it's also you kind of have it in your head when people say that they want a clean show that they want like like cruise ship comedians, and it's just like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can.
And it usually is a little more
over.
like they just kind of want to be changed into like da 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 punchline. Da, da, da. So it is kind of like they're not as sophisticated as audiences. But that's not sounding right because I don't think they're dumb or anything. But it's just like the comedy is not. They're not like experts. They're kind of like, let's go see the comedy show.
They don't want it to. They don't want to like
convention
think
center.
about the joke hard enough to like go into it. They want the very straightforward like, a grasshopper ordered a drink at the bar type thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
You guys know that joke? Do you guys know that joke?
Let's hear
One
it.
of my favorites.
The grasshopper ordered a drink at the bar, and the bartender was like, hey, we have a drink named after you here. And the grasshopper said, do you have a drink named Irving?
I like that one.
It's good.
Thanks. I wrote it just now. I came up with that.
Sorry if I clipped you just then.
No, you didn't. No problem. Yeah.
I like that. Irving is a good name for that. That's a good selection there. What are things with you, just comedy in general, that you feel like you're too hard on yourself about, and what are things that you think you could be more critical of yourself about? If you had to say,
this is great. We should all do this. I love this question.
yeah, okay,
This has just become a question everyone's going to get asked on the
yeah.
podcast. Yeah, I think like for right now, as far as like critical, I think the podcast, I'm like really excited to do this, but sometimes I'll be like I'll listen back and I'll realize I talk too much. I get so excited about these topics, so I think I can be a little hard on myself sometimes because I'm figuring out how to do this. Or even like with comics, like I won't worry about bombing so much, but sometimes I'll feel like the social interactions are the things that I'll like on the drive home I'll beat myself up about. So I'm trying to like be less critical of that.
Okay.
Yeah. I think more critical. I don't know. Man, that's a really good question. Like I think I'm pretty hard on myself, or I have like a lot of goal. I have like all the vision board. I mean, I don't use that word, but
Keep
like
using it.
Yeah.
I'm
very
loving it.
Organized. Man, like a thing I would be critical of myself.
Just
for?
start calling your calendar a vision board. That'd be cool.
I think maybe I should sit down and start writing more, putting pen to paper a little more. Like I think I've really been trying to like bring ideas up and finish them on stage more. But like that bomb from a few weeks ago, I was like, I probably should like prepare it a little more for this is more for me than for them. Yeah, I don't know. What about you?
Okay. I think I'm a little too critical on myself about trying to be original all the time, and just like being like too critical of like, oh, I already have a joke about this, or I'm touching this too much. A lot of my like joke writing is like, I come up with the premise first, and I think that can kind of lead me into talking about similar things too often, and stuff like that. And so like I'm pretty hard on myself about like, well, I have too many jokes about this, or like I feel like I've heard something similar to this, or like I feel like for me originality is like incredibly paramount to good comedy, but I might take that a little too far sometimes, as far as just like not doing something or abandoning a joke and stuff like that. not critical enough. I think the thing for me would be, I think a lot of times I'm like, oh, the premise will carry this joke enough that like I don't need to be all exact about editing and getting it more and more perfect or better or whatever. I think editing is something that I could be a little bit more critical of myself on.
Yeah.
Editing jokes and trying to improve them over time. I'm always just like, I want to keep doing new shit like all the time, and I really love writing. But I don't love editing that much.
That's interesting about being so emphasized on everything being unique. Yeah, because I think about that too. It's like you can almost feel hacky to do some of the jokes. There's a few jokes about being like a dad and my kids like being annoying that I feel like it was almost a little hacky, but I feel like a few of those is okay.
But it's like as long as you have a unique perspective on it, I don't think I think that like that goes into the idea that comedy has to have some kind of balance of like, okay, it's unique enough to surprise everybody and be original and be interesting, but it also has to be relatable.
Right.
Like you also have to
Yeah.
find a way to make it relatable. And I feel like that's one of the things, like, has anyone ever like talked to you about like, oh, have you ever like compromised a joke where you wrote it one way and it just wasn't working, and then like you had to switch either the punchline or like the example that you used so like more people understood what you were talking about.
Like almost dumb it down a little.
Yeah,
or something.
or not necessarily dumb it down, but make it more like
Accessible.
mainstream, And I feel like that's something that sometimes you have to do to make a joke work. But it's if you're telling a joke and nobody knows the fucking reference that you're making, that like sometimes that's why they're not laughing. And it's I don't know. I feel like a lot of jokes. I'm really bad about like doing a joke at an open mic twice and it didn't land and just being like, oh, I'm abandoning it forever. Like I'm just never going back to this. And I'll like come across it in my notes a couple years later and just being like, oh, well, what if I tried it this way? And then it ends up working. And it's like,
yeah,
cool. That would have been really useful in 2019.
But maybe you needed the time to figure it out or to grow into it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's a theme on this podcast too. The like going back to your old notebooks. Yeah, I mean, it's almost like the Beatles. It's like they started off with like these really accessible kind of like
Famous band from the 60s.
bubble.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
Not spelled like the bug, but with
yeah, hey, it's a pun.
because
Because a beat, like, you're beating on drums and
But
stuff.
it's like it was a mix of like really accessible like bubblegum pop and these weird like journeys into. So I think it is like having some things be like, okay, I need to like connect people so I don't just lose them. Like if you like being understood I've always felt like nobody understands what I'm talking about my whole life. So that's one of the goals of comedy.
Yeah.
And I just had Blackburn on and he was talking about how he started just being a maniac saying whatever weird shit and then figuring out jokes later. Whereas like, maybe that's kind of more your path.
He just started that?
Well, that's like over the last like he's been doing it for like 15 years or some.
Okay, yeah.
But like maybe you're kind of like doing it that way where you kind of start being weird. Whereas I started by just trying to write like jokes, like set up punch jokes, and then now I'm trying to.
I started by
unique.
being terrible. Is how I started.
Yeah.
I have a question.
I think they go hand
for
in
you
You didn't
boys.
answer your
I'm
question.
Not
Yeah.
I
We
know.
haven't- we haven't-
I weaseled my way out of it.
I fucking forgot about that.
But we
shit.
have plenty of time, so I hadn't forgotten either.
What is it?
It's what are things that you're not critical enough about, and what are things you should be more no. I just said the
Too
same thing.
critical on, not
Yeah.
critical enough about.
Yeah.
I definitely think I'm very critical about. I really need everyone to like me at all times. I need
On
it.
stage or in live?
We're talking about comedy.
Both
Oh, wow.
both
Okay.
things.
All right, cool.
And
Yeah.
I feel like I feel like people will tell me that my stage presence is like, oh, so natural or whatever, but it's like it's very separate from who I am in real life, I think. But that part is kind of consistent where it's like, oh, like I'll beat myself up where it's just like, well, they didn't like this or this wasn't unique enough, and it wasn't like, this isn't groundbreaking material at the Coffee Underground. So I feel like I'm very critical of myself doing that.
That last part you were saying, like you want at the Coffee Underground the material, like you want other comics to be like, whoa, that was.
It's because there's kind of a battle of like, so I want it to be relatable enough for the audience to like it and for it to land with the audience, but I also want the comics to be like impressed.
Right. Okay, yeah.
You know, because once you do comedy, like have you ever heard the saying that like doing comedy ruined comedy for me? Because now you know how the sausage is made. So it's like now even watching like I spend more time enjoying like local comics than I do watching specials on like Netflix and stuff, because it's just like, well, this is made for a bigger variety of people that's like very mainstream, and it's just kind of like, okay, this is good, but I like get it. You know what I mean?
I want to see Chris Weathers.
He's
Chris
so
Weathers
funny.
is so funny.
He's
Oh my
so funny.
Blackburn and I were just talking about him. I'm just like,
I'm sorry to repeat, but that's my guy.
No,
I fucking love that dude.
It's like a chorus to a song. You want to repeat.
Yeah.
It's like, Chris Weathers.
Well, it's like you see people like that, and you're just like, I will never be able to do that.
And half the time
know?
he's like, I'm not going up tonight. You go ahead. You know?
Yeah, and they're so nonchalant about it, and it's just like, fuck you.
Dude,
I try.
You try to tell him,
guy.
he's like awesome, and he's just like, please, I don't really want to. He's a little shy. Is he shy with you guys?
I actually got him pretty open, but we like a lot of the same like TV shows and shit. So I would normally just like talk to him about like Adult Swim shows and stuff like that.
I haven't talked to him very much, but the times that I have talked to him, it was always to tell him like how good his comedy was. And then I think it was like Travis or something was like, yeah, Chris doesn't like compliments. And I was like, no, that's the only thing I've said to him ever.
Okay, so we got your answer for the thing that you're too critical about yourself on. Mm-hmm. What's the thing you think you should be more critical about yourself on?
I can get really cocky. I don't think very like openly about it, but I think that if I do the same, not like cocky, like I guess not cocky, because cocky is like how you're treating other people about it. But I feel like more, I'll do the same 20 minutes 5 times in a row, and like it'll be really good, and then just be like, yeah, no, I got this, and then 6 months go by, and then I'm like, oh my God, I've changed absolutely nothing about this set. Like I haven't written new jokes. I haven't worked on the old ones to make them.
Were you trying new things at the mics that just didn't make it into the act, or is it like you're kind of?
I think I go through like ebbs and flows where I don't do new material on shows. I won't do it until I've done it enough times at an open mic to where I know that it is going to like at least land for part of the joke. But that becomes a problem because being like a parent and having a full-time job, I don't go to as many mics as I go to more shows than I go to mics.
Yeah, you get more time. So,
and it's like every time that I get into that, I'm like, I need to write new material. And so that's what I've been working on the past couple of months, is just write anything new. It doesn't matter if it bombs. It doesn't matter if it, is keepable or whatever. Just fucking do something new. And then, and then I end up like being like, what was that thing that I said that went really well that one time? Oh, well, it's gone forever. So
yeah. Cody and I were talking about that on here, about like just opening with like kind of what happened that week or that day, trying to put something up top just for a little spontaneity. It can set the tone. But then like I do that sometimes, and then sometimes I feel like it just sets the whole set like off on a really fun, spontaneous way. But there have also been times where I felt like I probably should have got him like laughing quick with a few things that I know work up top, because maybe,
do the little sandwich.
Like put it in the middle. Maybe that is better. But some way to like fold a few new ideas into the 20 minutes so you know you can like get back out of it. Or, but that's a theme on here too. Like I did that at Mike's for the longest time. Like I would commit to doing all new stuff in the car, but
I feel like you should have told us what the themes were up top, so we know. We keep getting all these theme reveals that we don't fucking know about.
I just throw them out as like there's so many themes. I guess I need to like give people a little like print out beforehand, like here are the themes.
This is what we're going to talk about.
Be sure to be prepared.
All these goddamn
like
mystery
we're on fucking
themes.
Fallon, like these are the interview questions. Don't go off.
Pre-interview.
I mention it because it's like it excites me that I can have a conversation with different people and the same kind of things like emerge. And sometimes in the same ways, but sometimes in different ways. It's like the whole subjectivity of comedy, where like we would watch, like when you guys drive back, don't you like often disagree on like who is funny and or who had a good set? like it's
when me and Zlata,
Yeah, I think there's I feel like I talk about it more to people that are not comics, where I try to like have this conversation where it's like there's the objectivity of who did the best, and then there's like, but who was your favorite?
Right.
You know, because it's like, because sometimes the audience doesn't respond as well. It's like, well, they were number one in my book. So
audience response versus like your personal taste. Yeah.
That's why it's hard when people are like, well, who are your favorite comics versus it's like, okay, well, people who I'm so glad that I'm not like a booker or responsible for making lineups for shows because it's so like
so
hard.
uncomfortable having that power.
Yeah,
I don't like it.
It's difficult being like, well, okay, who is my favorite comic or who do I think is going to be like a good group of people to have on this show for this audience in this venue?
And it should be that one, but people get all pissy with you. Oh, you're on your third show and you haven't booked me yet. It gets all weird.
I
hate that shit.
Because I hate you.
No, I'm just doing it with the podcast. Oh, I haven't been on the podcast. This is why you're not on the podcast. Okay. Shit like
the
this.
more you ask. I don't know. You asked earlier about if I send out like emails to bookers and stuff like that. I think that.
And you were like, no, people just want me.
Well,
and I was like, damn,
no.
Nobody would book me.
I think one of my goals for this year was to try to do more stuff out of town because I feel like people will be like, oh, you do all these shows, but then I'm like, I don't really do. They're all the same. It's just the same three shows over and over, and it's in the same spots, and it's like that's nice, but it's also like. Then when you do go out of town like a little bit and you realize like, oh, no one has any idea who the fuck I am. It puts you in that position of like, if I were to reach out to somebody and ask, they would be like, I've never heard of you. And I also don't have any videos of myself at all.
Videos
and that's
are hard.
I hate the pressure.
Internet's ruined everything.
But I was going to say I feel like when you're a local comic with local bookers that do come out to the shows, I feel like I'm against the idea of like constantly asking to be on shows because to me it's like if you constantly ask the same person over and over again
to be on shows. It's like, or I don't know, it depends. If a local booker is like, I prefer people to send me specific dates, then it's like, oh, I've heard that, so I'll do that. But I mean, the local shows, it's more like for out of town where I think sending the things out can help. Yeah. But
I think it's different, like being like, hey, this is my availability. You're like, oh, I'd love to do your show versus like some of the bookers that I talk to, like in Greenville or out in Columbia and stuff like that. It'll be just people like badgering them. And it's just like, that might be your answer. Like this.
If you've asked
silence is deafening sometimes.
It's like maybe try again in like a year or two if it's like somebody from Atlanta and you've gone and like met them or done a mic set. But I think a lot of it just kind of is rejection, which I don't mind. But I like what you said about doing like the same 3 shows again and again, because I think I've started to try to, when I have those local shows, I do repeatedly to make those more experimental. So it's like, all right, the first time I do 20 minutes in a room for a monthly show, I'll do like my best 20, and then the next time I'll do like half and half, and then if I keep getting invited back, I will start to just try to do crowd work and new shit the whole time. So that can be cool. I think there's like factors as to whether the audience paid, because like that bomb from a few weeks ago, I was like, when I really was driving home, I was like, all right, I came in. And you said something about like cocky or confidence level too, where somebody said that, where I didn't realize I was really feeling like just on
so
that day.
Good.
And I did like a coffee bar show where I went long. I did all my weird shit. I was like, I could just do this now.
Yeah.
So I was like, just really like, and that really brought me like back down to reality.
It's a humbling endeavor.
It's humbling. It's good to
I
be
didn't even
humbled,
realize I was
though.
cocky, and now I'm like, I was like coming in like really swaggery, like just throwing the notebook down. Let's see what new genius things I've just come up with. And then like halfway through, I'm like, shit, I made a terrible mistake. I don't think I can get them back.
I know. And then you say the one like, this'll really get them, and then it's too late. They're already like, no, we already fucking hate you, man.
That's when you really feel the sweat back there. And you're like,
It's like, I have no more tricks up
You
my sleeve.
bring the closer up in your set because you're like, I need this to like get some momentum, and then that doesn't work. So
Yeah.
then you're like,
Don't even have that net anymore.
cool.
You're like,
you're like, oh.
this is just gonna end real bad in a few minutes. Okay.
I have a question. When did you guys like realize you wanted to start doing stand up, but at what point in your life did you realize like, oh, I like making people laugh?
My whole life.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, were you guys the class clowns in school and stuff like that?
No, I was the nerd.
Okay. So at what point were you like,
Well, when it really kicked up was just like when social media and like I got a Twitter. That was like,
Okay.
like making like I.
like teen years?
Yeah, because I would say freshman year. So I did get a Facebook in 7th grade, and then I think I posted statuses and stuff that like were just like
This is a true
premises to jokes.
nerd answer too. You're
Yeah.
like, as soon as the internet allowed me to be funny.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was just like, but no, like when I got a Twitter, as soon as I entered high school, like I was just posting jokes, like on like they would be like, I'm sure I could go back and find my Twitter, and there would be like some like decently solid like premises that I could make stand up jokes out of. But I just like would be like imagining hypothetical situations and stuff like that. So I think that's really when it kicked up a lot, because like I had a Twitter and people that didn't even know me, like I'd meet people that went to a different high school from the same town as me that followed me on my Twitter. They'd be like,
Oh, shit! You had some regional.
Yeah, well,
reach.
just not like a lot or anything like the way it is now with like people that blow up on TikTok or whatever, but just like people be like, oh, you're Coble. Yeah, I follow you on Twitter. You're fucking funny, dude.
Did you have like influences or like people that made you laugh that you were trying to mimic, like sketch comedy or other stand-up comedians or writers or?
I mean, I definitely like watched a decent amount of stand up in middle school and high school, and I think like middle school it was like the very broad comics that I watched that like everyone watched, like Kevin Hart, and like stuff like that. And then I think I started like you found people like Hannibal Buress and Eric Andre and stuff like that. Starting in high school, I think was when I started like following those people. And then like I mentioned Greg Giraldo earlier, like I saw him on the roast, and then his stand up was also really, really good. So I think those people, but I don't know if I like really thought of it as like, oh, this is stand up, but in hindsight doing stand up now, I look back and like, oh, I was just kind of writing premises to jokes.
Do you write stuff out now? Like, do you write them before you say them? Like,
no, I just think of it in my head, and then I write down like 3 words or 4 words.
Then you like practice saying it out loud to yourself first, or you just kind of say like the first time you say it out loud.
Sometimes
like
I think when I'm like searching for like where it should go, I'm kind of like just driving my car in the shower or whatever, and just like kind of like mouthing it to myself a little bit. Like if you've seen Cody before he goes up, sometimes he'll be like kind of like,
yeah, he's almost like like air drumming his
and at this point
like a fast
Yeah.
soundless.
Do it again. Do it again.
It is, that is. It's got the posture and everything.
Croissant.
yeah. But so I think I do a little bit of that, but I kind of like saying it for the first time at an open, not like for a book show, but like I'm sure there's been times at the Odd, like I did like my last week at the Odd, I did 2 jokes, and I think both of them 2 new jokes, and both of them I think the first time I'd said it out loud was into a mic. Nice.
Oh, that's cool.
What about you, Ryan? When did you decide you wanted to
do stand up? It was after my first kid was born. I always loved like The Simpsons and Conan O'Brien in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like in college, I would watch like the weird Conan show, and Norm would come on all the time and just like tell some long story, and that was kind of like, and Mr. Show, like weird stuff like that.
Yeah, Mr. Show is so underrated.
But I guess I always like really liked comedy. Still don't really ever feel like I've been that fun. I'm not that funny of a person in real life. Like compared to just like being around these freaking like between like Chesney and Hillary at that place, I'm like, I'm not like a really hilarious person. I don't have this like big personality, which is kind of why I like this podcast, because there's a chance this is more of the real me, I think, than the stage me. But after Eleanor was born, like I started listening to like Carlin and Pryor and all that stuff again. I think it was like that was when comedy really started. The new boom started, and so I was just kind of into it.
What year was that?
This is probably like, I probably started thinking about it like 12 years ago when the Asheville scene was like just starting.
Yeah.
And Tom Peters, my friend, he started the Odd, so I knew he was there. So I thought about going for like years. And then I joined a Toastmasters group that was just for public speaking because I was so scared to just tell any story. So I did that for like a year or two.
Yeah. That's interesting because it's like, so I feel like I was always a kid that got like, I used comedy as kind of like a defense mechanism when even in like early middle school, kind of like, haha, like they can't laugh at me if I laugh at myself first type thing,
Did it work?
Yeah. Most of the time I got in trouble a lot with the teachers because they would be like, you're trying to be funny right now and we're having a serious moment. And it was just like one of those things where it's just like, cool. First
Zlata,
bomb.
the Holocaust is not funny.
Oh, that's when I started
6 million.
my edgiest material.
Yeah, you had your edgelord era really early.
So you were a class clown though. You were
yeah, and then but it wasn't like, I don't think it was like intentional. And then I was always very into like writing stuff, even in like elementary school and stuff. I was more of like I wanted to write like stories, and when I got into high school, it was writing speeches. It was like I was very into writing like speeches and doing like the class presentations and stuff. And so I don't think it was until after I got out of high school, probably around like it's like 2012. I was listening to Pandora, and I had just watched Eugene Merman's Comedy Central presents. And I was so good. I love Eugene Merman. And I was like, oh, well, let me type this in on Pandora and see if like, that was kind of like the moment that I was like, oh, like you can just listen to comedy. Like you don't have to wait for it to come on TV. Like you can just listen to it all the time. And then I think there was like this moment where it was like, oh, like, you know how you love attention and you know how you love like talking in front of people. Like, what if you combined the two? And and then I was like a coward about it until 2015. And then I was like, I'm just going to do it. And I brought a coworker with me to the first open mic I ever did because I was like,
Coffee Underground?
No, Art Bar in Columbia. Because I was like, I don't want to bring my friends because they'll just laugh even if it's not good, you know?
I see that
And
happen,
it's
and I'm like,
it's
eventually all these friends aren't going to be here.
I know.
But thank you for bringing them because there wasn't an
yeah, it's like, because the rest of us want them here. Yeah.
I hope they like me too.
Yeah. But it's so like the idea of bombing and not knowing that I bombed was so much scarier to me than
I'm still
just
haunted by
eating
that.
shit. Yeah, it's like don't make me think that I did really well when it was just like garbage. And then, I don't know. That after that first set, I was like, oh, this actually feels so good, and so I kept coming back to.
I think I'm the opposite. Like I feel bad like a decent amount after my sets, and then people will be like, oh, that was a good set or whatever. Like people that aren't even my friends are just like, I don't know. Like,
do you record them and go back and listen?
Sometimes, yeah.
Do they sound better than you would think when you go?
Yeah, usually. I just think I'm a little bit of a self-hater sometimes about shit, and then
it is hard not to put yourself up there and then not hate yourself. I struggle with that.
I mean, like I saw Derek Boscovich, like he has no reason to be nice to me because I don't even fucking know him.
He's
and
so funny.
I told him that he had a good set at the Odd. I saw him Thursday at the roast of James and Allison, and then I told him, I was like, oh, I really liked your set at the Odd on Tuesday, and then was like, I was like, your joke about the like mom abandoning a son versus a father abandoning a son, is like, I thought it was really great. And he was like, he's like, oh, you were like really fucking funny too. Your joke about, it was like my joke about porn stars breaking the fourth wall and like talking to you directly and bringing you out of the fantasy and how I hate that. He's like, I love that joke. And then I just thought to myself, I was like, I hate that joke. Why did I even fucking say it? It's just like, it goes back to the thing I said about like wanting to be super original. It's hard to take a compliment. And then especially about specific jokes, like I feel like sometimes I rely too much on like taboo topics to like carry the premise. And I don't want that. Like I really like when I can talk about something that on its face is like nothing
Like Mitch Hedberg
inherently
or something,
funny.
like make candy funny or something like that. Make some benign thing.
I'm not like a huge Mitch. I mean, I really have
Like
a lot
how
of
Rory
respect for
Scovel
him.
does it.
Yeah, like Rory.
Yeah,
No,
well,
like
you were
Rory.
telling me about that, about how he'll kind of like talk about nothing, but it's really funny. And when I was
Yeah.
watching, especially, he was talking about the throwing a frisbee thing, and
Oh,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
there it is.
Yeah. He's like, these look good with the forearm throw. They're like,
Yeah, he does have a
ease
good
off,
range.
pal. Ease off. No one's getting laid off a frisbee, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like-
it is interesting just thinking about how much the material is just like goofy shit and how much of it's like my children and aging and you know more serious topics.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's why it's hard to kind of like answer the questions about. You can't really make a blanket statement when you're talking about like what is and isn't a good thing to write a joke about, because for every example that you come up with, you can like come up with a different example of a comic that like did make it work. So
Yeah.
so you can make anything work as long as it's funny. It's
Yeah.
just sometimes it's not like for you. I don't know. I think I get
Make more jokes about your pussy and dick. Pussy and dick.
you need to hump the stool.
Yeah.
That's all
Not
you're
enough, not
missing.
I just think like stool humping, there is an art to it, you know, like, but just a lot of men forget the foreplay
Yeah.
when they're messing with the stool.
I feel like it's like a place for like not for people that look like my demographic. I feel like it's just not something I went I went to a city that I won't
People,
name
don't
recently.
people don't want to watch this guy hump a stool.
It was like
yeah.
a bunch of like bald dudes in like their 30s and 40s talking about their like common dicks, and I was like, man, it's really it's a very high percentage, you know. Whereas like,
yeah.
I probably would, if it had not been somebody who looked like me, I might have been like able to enjoy it more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes it just gets to be a lot.
You need
Yeah.
to talk about like Baroque rock and stuff like that. Yeah.
I am trying to find more like weird topics and stuff. I like the idea that you could talk about some frisbee or some obscure thing, but you can still hint at a larger thing through that. You know, you can still sort of like, it still says something about the world or who you are,
Yeah.
even though it's Skittles or, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
Well-
I do write jokes like that occasionally. It's just like few and far between. Like my like Chick-fil-A joke about like I just think it's funny that they make them say it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
It was my pleasure
Yeah.
or whatever, and like a 19-year-old teenager guy is like having to say it was my pleasure to another man, but he
Yeah.
doesn't want to say it.
It is
Just,
uncomfortable
like,
sometimes.
So I wish I found more of those jokes, but they're
Because
just
they're
really
torturing
hard.
all those gay people in the back.
Yeah.
That's why they're so polite out front.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Throwing them in the fucking peanut oil.
Do you guys want another drink? I'm going to get up for a
Yeah, I
second.
might
I
get some
got
of that
mine.
black tea if you don't mind.
So good.
Penis.
In the microphone? Are we saying this? So when I was a young we didn't have cable growing up like most of the time, and then we finally got like satellite, and we got Fuse, and so I would stay up late and watch like Whitest Kids You Know, and I was just like, oh, this is amazing. And it's like a lot of those things have not aged very well, but for a long time I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what, and had like never watched Saturday Night Live, like never had any concept of like, yeah, this is like a giant, this is the thing every comic wants to do. But I don't know. I think, look at this pouch, man. This cat is amazing. Ugh. I don't know. I feel like in my head, I'm like, yeah, I'd love to do sketch comedy. I just don't think I'd be very good at it.
Yeah. I feel like this podcast is kind of like unlocking a little more stuff. Like, people want video for this podcast, but like, I'm so much more secure with how it sounds. I feel like it sounds pretty good now that we've got the mics figured out.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
watching myself like just cross my legs from one side to the other, like 90
Yeah,
times,
yeah, yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I get more insecure about being seen. So part of this is trying to get more comfortable with that too.
I remember doing David Baker's podcast to be like, God, my facial hair looks like shit.
I We had to videotape ourselves for nursing school doing like a simulation, and then we would have to watch the video afterwards of like how we responded to the situation. And everybody called me out because when I'm standing there not doing anything, I would do this thing with my fingers where I would just go like this and like tap on my fingers, Matt. And I would sit there and like when they play the video back, it's like they'd played it like 2 times speed, so it's just me sitting there like I was like, oh,
They sped it up like
cool.
Hitler footage or something.
Everyone sees me just like
Hitler.
not knowing what to do with my hands the whole time. Love it.
You're talking about Adolf, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, the
cool.
Hitler.
Yeah,
That
I didn't
one.
know if there's another one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think they sped
You
up.
think
like
he's the
his-
only guy named Hitler ever?
I think he's probably, without being sped up, he's probably a real piece of shit. But I think
Yeah.
they would speed him up in the footage to make him look more
Yeah.
insane.
Well, he's
The
also
propaganda.
on meth, so you know.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he was on like tons of uppers.
What?
You didn't know that?
No.
Well,
Hitler was
most
on
of Nazi
speed?
Germany. Yeah, most of Nazi Germany was on meth and cocaine.
I didn't even know meth was like a thing back then.
Hitler invented meth. You heard it here first. This is how podcasts work. You just say, and then you
Yeah.
just make a clip, and it becomes some false
It
information.
goes-
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we were talking outside when we took a quick break about like the doing like the Ocony and doing like I really think like having like the tight clean set is just a really wonderful thing because it's like that's like all comedy is to some people, and then you kind of have that as a barometer for like just being a professional comic or whatever it is,
Yeah.
you know. But you don't want to get too sucked into that where you just only do like that
Yeah.
set, you know.
I feel like I have a lot of the stuff that my parents ingrained in me rattling around, like just like my parents were always against like profanity and stuff, and my dad was always very big on like, oh, like profanity is just words that people use when they don't have a good vocabulary. And then later found out that like he cussed all the fucking time. He cussed all the
Yeah.
time, just not in front of us. So like
Yeah.
when I write things, I try to do it without putting the cuss words in it. And then when I get more comfortable, it's like, cause I just cuss in natural language or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that's helped because the first time that I got asked to do a clean set, I panicked because I was like, well, no one's ever specified that like it has to be clean. So then it pushes that that pressure on you that's like, well, don't say anything fucked up. And then when I was like going through the jokes that I had for Tom's show, because the first time he asked me, he was like, can you do 20 clean minutes? And I was like, I don't have 20 clean minutes. Like, I can't do 20 minutes clean. And then he was like, well, can you do 10? And I was like, yeah, I'll do 10. And I panicked about it for like 4 months. And then like when I was going through my set list, I was like, oh, like none of this is problematic. Like none of this is a problem.
I don't think anything you
do
say is
all
fucked up,
this.
but you maybe couldn't say the expression "fucked up," so it's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah.
interesting. It's like you
Yeah.
can say fucked up things, but you can't say fucked up.
Yeah. And it's I feel like that's a show where they had a bad experience where they had just people trying to do like shock value at one point.
Yeah, there
and
was
so then
somebody
they
that came through at
specified.
that very specific show that really caused a problem because I was actually on a show with Peachy Tom down there like a couple months ago, and there's a guy named David who is very cool and funny that forgot over the last few months that it was supposed to be a clean show, and he went up and just did like, oh, how to catch a predator. You guys don't even fucking know what that is. Okay, I'll fucking explain it. It was like, and Peachy Tom was like furious.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And he's so
yeah.
tall and like
Yeah.
scary looking. You know?
He
And he
looked
came up, I was
straight
like-
out of the
I was like,
woods.
I'll be clean.
And he has God on his side.
He does
That's
have-
fucking wrath of
Yeah.
God. You say
like-
a prayer real quick. You fucking lightning bolt. Fucking.
But yeah,
he
man.
prays a lot. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I've enjoyed.
it's a good
his
ally
shows,
to
you know?
have.
Yeah,
God. You know.
God.
Yeah, God's a good ally.
Do you
to
believe
have.
in God?
Yeah. He lives in
No.
you.
Oh,
He lives in me.
yeah. He's everywhere. You know. That's what
He
they say.
watches over everything we see. There's a little Lion
Do you
King
believe in
2
God?
reference. Do I believe in God?
Yeah.
I don't know. Who cares? It's fine. Whatever.
Do you believe in God?
I wouldn't. I would agree with the things you said, but I wouldn't gender God. And I think that's mainly because I have like daughters, so it's like it's the sky is his, everything's his, like that kind of shit. But yeah, I mean, I think like there's some dimension that we're all connected, And that's like, you know, like a good comedy show is like people coming together. And one of the things I like about doing these types of shows that they're like more rural, more clean, more like those are people that probably go to church.
Yeah.
And so to try to make them laugh is important to me because I think like one of the things are so divisive now. And like I said this on the podcast where I almost feel like if I'm just in Asheville, it's like, well, we have our jokes where I say like, I went to therapy and everybody claps. And it's like, and then it's,
I don't think anyone has ever clapped at a joke I've done ever.
Really?
I said that the other day, and then I thought about it afterwards, and I think it's true.
Maybe
I don't think I've
you
ever
don't say
said.
anything
do weird
that's
topics,
like, yeah,
maybe.
you don't
Yeah.
go
It's like,
on
I just had
stage
a
and you're
birthday.
like,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
no, that's a lie. That's a lie.
I
There's
just
one
became a
thing.
father. Like, if
it's
you
not a
said-
joke. It's the setup. I say my grandma lived to be 106,
Yeah.
and sometimes people will clap about
Yeah.
that.
Did you clap at that?
Yeah. People
Is that
clap.
true?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she lived to be 106.
I mean, that's, you know, clap worthy.
yeah, clappable.
Yeah.
Let's clap now.
Everyone just at home, just.
But that's
Coble's
literally
grandma.
the only thing I've ever said into a microphone that people have clapped at. I think.
Yeah.
Is that my grandma
I mean,
lived to be
I don't think
106.
it's good. Like, I don't like it when, you know, they clap. Like, yeah, I don't know.
I like
It's
what
like,
you
aw.
were saying about how when you do the shows, it's like important to you to make the people in the shows where it's like a group of people that like go to church and stuff. Because I feel like because the thing you were saying about things being more divisive now, I feel like in the past couple of years, it's been really kind of eye opening to like be conscious of how important community is.
Yeah.
Like community is so important.
So important.
And
especially with
it's-
kids, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all are the kids having people, and I can feel it. And
well,
I
it's
was
like,
just
'cause
like,
it's important.
I'm like,
And
people
it's-
need
Yeah,
to-
you
people
care
need to
about-
work it
yeah.
out. Like, we have to.
Yeah.
you have to
when we're dead.
have a degree of optimism. I feel
Yeah.
like when you have kids,
but
you know,
it's
but
also like
I
even
don't, so
outside
you
of
don't need it.
having kids, it's like at my job, I feel like even with the patients, it's like it's so important to me to have some kind of like bond with the people where it's like, hey, like we trust each other on some level of like, I'm not just here because like I have to be here. You
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah.
that level of trust of like I care about you as a person, and we probably in a lot of cases wouldn't get along if the topic went to like multiple things, but it's
Yeah.
still like it's still important to be like, okay, well, I care enough about you to make sure you have like your basic needs, and you know, when you're at the grocery store, and it's that sense of like humanity of like someone drops something next to you and it's closer to you than it is to them, and like you go and
Yeah.
you pick it up for them because
Yeah.
it just feels like it's like we should give a shit. Like
Yeah.
that seems like such a basic thing that is obvious, but you don't really like. I don't know. So it's just easy to be like, well, I don't fucking know that person. Like they don't mean anything to me. And it's just like, no. And it's nice when it's, when you can apply it to comedy, when it's just like, these are people I would never intentionally spend time with.
Yeah.
And we all had a good time.
Yeah, and
Like, this is
afterwards they might
nice,
come up to you and you might have a thing, and they might actually be a little more open to like letting somebody's voice like yours in.
Right,
If they
yeah.
have like a trans nephew like next
Yeah.
year, maybe the comedy show could even like help a little.
Exactly.
with that.
It's-
like broaden
yeah.
people's, you know, but you can't give them too much. You got to like read it. But I think there is something that's the job. You're a comedian. Like I think it's cool to try to like it kills me when people like oh like the South is like, you know, it's like dumb or whatever, and it's like those people that went
Yeah.
into the little theater out in the country, like they're not dumb. They just have
Yeah.
the things that are their values are just different. So to try to like
Right.
calibrate your material to get the maximum connection, I think.
Okay,
is like,
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so it feels like with comedy, people have this like attitude that's like you should be able to make anybody laugh as a comic. Like if you're a good comic, anyone should be able to laugh. But I don't feel like people feel that way in other mediums of art.
Yeah.
So like if someone talked to Tom Morello and they were like, well, you know, a lot of like older conservatives don't like Rage Against the Machine, he would be like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
You know, like that's not
Yeah.
our audience. Like
Yeah.
I've accepted that. Or like someone who's like kind of an abstract visual artist, they might be like, you know, you don't have broad appeal, and they'd be like, well, that's not really what I'm going for. But with comedy, it seems like it's a lot more of a thing for people to say that a good comedian should be able to make anyone laugh. Like how do you reconcile the fact
it's a
that
great question.
That stand-up comedy is an art form, yet it has a different
I think it's
feeling
like,
about that
I think
thing.
for me, it's like I'm realistic about where I am now, and I don't know that I think eventually, if the day ever came when some people are buying tickets with my name on it in multiple cities, then I will have the luxury of being a little more like, well, this is my lane, and you can take it or leave it. Like but I don't know that I expect that day to come for me. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, these are the shows that are accessible to me in the region now. So why not try to like connect as much as I can through those? And I'm also like, I'm 44. So I'm kind of like, I think I'm just inherently a little more like,
I thought you were like 35. I'm so serious right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like old enough to where like, I think I really like, you were talking about Zoomers, and like, for me, it's like the, what is one above me called? The
Gen X.
I'm in like a younger
Because baby boomer, Gen
boomers.
X.
Like
Boomers,
I boomers. That was the word I was looking for. Like I kind of I noticed that I have more forgiveness for boomers not changing their minds than like my millennial friends a lot of times. You know?
Yeah, because we're coming up on that.
Yeah.
We're definitely we're
I've
coming
seen
up
it
on
change
being,
enough to where I'm like, they're gonna be coming for y'all with the words you think are so good now and virtue signaling. It's gonna like you guys
I love
are gonna
it because it's been such a little thing the past couple years where millennials are just like, boomers just won't change their ways, and then it's like the same people who are saying that kind of blindly are the same ones that I've heard be like, oh, these fucking kids, and say they're obsessed with their phones, and it's just like that was you.
Yeah.
That was you 2 weeks ago. So
Yeah.
you got to give grace.
Yeah, so maybe part of it's some of that, but I don't think you have to be. I think it is cool to kind of be like, well, I'm not going to be try to be for everybody, and that. But I think it could be a harder path for like getting booked. So to me, it's like getting booked and getting longer sets is really the thing that's going to help me take it as far as I want. But then in an ideal world, eventually people would buy a ticket with my name on it, and I could become more. Like there's this guy named Greg Harden. He books for Funny Business, and he's like very like, he books like corporate casinos, cruises, and universities, and he's kind of like, these are the rules for what I do, and he pays better, and you can get like a hotel and actually enough money to like.
Better.
But it's like, these are the rules. You know, when you start out, you have to be clean, you have to do all these things, and then if you get, you know, once you become famous and everyone knows who Ryan Cox is, then you can do what you want. But you know, I'm like old enough to where I don't even really expect to ever get like famous or anything, you know?
It's
like
just the enjoyment.
Well, I think expect is like, that's such a strong word. I don't think anyone should expect it, but maybe be hopeful. I don't know.
But I'm definitely way more that way than Asheville. I noticed like Asheville is just this super liberal place where it's like, it's almost like, I think the vibe is a little like, well, they're dumb if they, you know, don't like, agree with me on abortion or whatever. And I'm like, well, but I got family members who are good people that like Trump and hate abortion, even though I don't agree with them. Like I would still like to get together and have a good time with them.
Yeah,
like, I think that's like
smoke some weed.
I think it's important to
smoke a doober.
It's important to be able to like have some kind of dynamic with people that you like fundamentally disagree with. I think, but and that doesn't mean like I also don't think that means like being passive about shit. But it's also like, okay, like we can be polite to each other, I guess. But the thing you were saying about like, comics should be able to make like any room laugh. I think it's a skill set to be able to read the room and adjust your set to a different room. But I don't think that it's like comedy has technical skills just like any other art form does, because it's like you could say the thing about Tom Morello where it's like, okay, well, lots of people don't like Rage Against the Machine, but he also still has the technical skill set of like, well, he can read sheet music and he can like do the things that you need.
He's objectively good in areas.
He's objectively good at music. It's just the music that he does is in
his sensibility
and
the political
and Rage
nature.
Against the Machine was like, hey, this is our thing. Is it's like fucking, you know, punk rock aesthetic, like fuck people who don't. And it's like, that can almost kind of work. But there are probably, I'm sure there's comedians on the internet that are doing that it is working for. They're like, I dress this way, I say what the fuck I want, and I get viral. And I think you probably can do it that way too.
Yeah. I just think that the general attitude with comedy, stand-up comedy specifically, is a little bit different about just that attitude. Like, I think sometimes comics are a little locus of control, I think is the term of like, do we individualistically have control over our destinies? That's like just kind of a thing that people are on a spectrum of belief on, of like, no, the universe kind of controls what happens and we can kind of push and pull a little bit, but ultimately we're not in control of our destinies. And the other side of the spectrum is, no, I have complete control over what happens to me. And I think comedy compared to other art forms tends to have a very like,
we think we can control it more.
We want to believe that no matter what's happening in the room, no matter what's going on, no matter who's there, if you do it well, people will laugh, and I think that
It's
the
like,
truth
once they hear
lies
my
somewhere in
voice-
between.
That was me before that show. I was like, once they hear
Yeah.
my voice, this is about to be like.
I feel like that's also
I know what you mean.
that's a thing that gets brought up because I feel like, especially with newer comics, a lot of people will blame the audience, and that's
Yeah.
a thing like that you shouldn't do. You know, it's
Yeah.
like you shouldn't
Unforgivable
be
sin.
like,
Yeah.
well, it's the audience's
Yeah.
fault that I was so
Yeah.
bad, and it's like.
It's like, first of all, you're an open micer doing an open mic set, so
Yeah. I don't think that we always have total control over, like, sometimes it's just not your demographic and it's not your room, and that's fine. But it's also like there are ways that you can win over an audience just,
Yeah.
you know, with little tricks and just charisma and things like that. And I don't know.
And there are limitations to
Charisma.
reading the
I wish-
room
wish
based
I
off
had
of
more of that.
What?
Charisma.
charisma.
I know a
You're
lady
charismatic.
named
Just
Charisma.
People that can just be charismatic. I'm like, fucking.
Listen, I'm
I
so
think you're
jealous
jealous.
of the comics like Hillary and like
Yeah.
my best friend
Yeah.
Jen Snyder. I don't know if you know
Yeah,
them.
I know Jen. Yeah. They walk into
they're-
a room and there's not a comedy show, and
Oh
people
my
go, "Who's that?"
God! And they're so just like they're just themselves, and it's
Confident,
just
yeah.
like
Yeah.
I can make any sentence that I am going to talk about so funny, and it's just like, God, I wish I had that. I wish
Yeah.
I didn't have to plan
Yeah.
every word in this sentence and every inflection for this to work.
I bet you could get away with more of that than you think, though. Like, you know, just like hearing you say you kind of want more of that in your
I don't
acts
know.
too. Maybe try to drift into just being the character more.
Yeah, but I feel like it's also like I don't know. I think that comics in general want to. They'll say that they want to be more of what they're not because they'll see someone else do it really well. But it's like I honestly think the times that I do my best is like when I practice, when I work it out, like when I'm writing things down. Even with like new jokes, it's like the time that I can tell the difference from the audience's reaction from a new joke that is like kind of half finished that I half-assed and went on stage, and it's like they laughed at like some of it, but it wasn't really like tight because one of the things that I do is I like ramble a lot if I don't.
Right, like extraneous words that
Yeah,
aren't needed for
exactly.
the punch.
And if I don't cut the fat out of it intentionally, it's just awful. But there's like a huge difference between like a set that I took the time to write out and look at and like, okay, do you really need this sentence? Like, I think that they understand what I'm fucking trying to talk about without using 3 examples of the same thing.
Yeah, especially if they don't each get like a big laugh at the,
Right,
at the end
yeah.
of the list. Yeah.
Sorry, I keep dropping my arm down. I played disc golf yesterday. My arm's a little sore.
yeah.
You know, it's kind
You try the
of
left
rest.
arm. You try the left.
Excuse
Yeah,
to
it just
flex.
doesn't feel natural
That- it
holding
is
the
kinda
mic
foreign.
with the left.
Do y'all always hold this mic in the same stand?
Well,
Hand?
sometimes I'll do bits like where my right hand is like doing a thing, and I'll switch to the left. But almost like 95% of the time, I'm holding the mic with my right hand.
Yeah, same.
Oh,
Yeah,
I shuffle
same.
back and forth and pace and then sometimes
No
I'll
one
try
paces like I do.
You,
You
do
see
pace.
me?
You do pace.
I'll be like
You
standing
are
backwards.
a little
and-
pacing boy. Yeah.
I'm not little.
I like the pacing.
he said, "I'm not little."
I'm not little. I'm
Yeah.
big.
Pacing big boy. Okay.
Yeah.
Amend it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right.
I do. I was thinking about the pacing and the pauses, though. I think it is.
Yeah.
That is kind of a. You'll kind of do
I
like
just kind of like it, like
almost
feeling
like,
like
you're
I'm
working
just
on a
like,
plan or something.
Yeah,
You'll
or
kinda
talking on
pace
the
room, like
phone.
slowly,
Yeah.
like
or
Yeah.
it makes it seem like you're just now thinking of all the shit you're saying, even if it was like very
Yeah.
much thought of.
Yeah.
You
Like
know,
you're
where
hatching
you're just,
some-
yeah.
So that's deliberate.
Devious
You're
plan.
like, if I do this, it'll look like I'm being a little more.
Well, I think it
spontaneous
actually
and-
kind of helps me like get in a rhythm. Some
It's like going for a walk to kind of
yeah,
like work out an
or-
idea.
yeah. or like I said, talking on the phone. I think that was the best example.
We peaked with phone. What about like going for a drive, like in the country?
Well, I think we should just cut the examples. At
I think we
speaking
should
on the
list
phone.
5
This is
more
one of those
things.
lists. It's like they're not getting better.
No, it's not. It's fallen off a lot since I said something.
I do love it when when you remove a thing from like remove a list or something and it still works. Like that's my favorite when you just cut things out.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I talk
Yeah.
too much too, and this podcast is me just like about half of these words are necessary.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I talk. But I'm hoping the better I get at comedy, the more I can speak
Yeah.
clearly and succinctly.
That was
Brevity.
one of the things that
Brevity,
I
yeah.
got so lucky starting comedy where I did, because I started in Columbia, and the people that were around me were like so kind about being like, the advice that they did give me was very like practical, and it was very like, hey, move the mic stand out from in front of you. Like, hey, don't play with the cord. Very like, okay, like now take that set and write it and like cut all the fat out of it. And all of those things are things that kind of like stuck with me, where it's like, if they wouldn't have said that to me, it's not something I would have figured out on my own for a long time, I don't think, because it's one of those things that when you first start out, you're like nervous and you're playing with stuff. You need something to do with your hands and like, you don't know what it looks like from the audience's perspective, so you don't see how big of a difference it is.
Distracting
to like,
shit is happening.
Yeah, like just something like the moving the mic stand thing is such a simple thing that like, it's like, oh shit, like I'm really glad you pointed that out to me, because I would have stood behind it the whole time.
I love
So
this
you know Chris Freeland? You did the North Carolina versus South Carolina show.
Oh yeah, Chris.
He filled in. Yeah, he
Love
taught
Chris
a
Freeland.
stand-up comedy class for Alchemy Comedy.
I didn't know
And that was when I first started talking to Chris a lot, because I just thought that was so goddamn funny. I don't know why. Just like having to teach a class on stand-up and just like how absurd that feels. Like, what would be like? It's like improv people that have never done stand-up ever, and you're having to teach them how to do stand-up. What would the first class be like for you? What would be your like
First of all,
day one?
It's not about
Don't
the team
talk
anymore.
to the audience.
Yeah.
I just thought that was
Did
so
he-
goddamn
did he,
funny.
Like when you were like, "This is hilarious that you're teaching stand up," was he like, "Why is that funny?" Or is he like,
No,
that
he
is
was
funny?"
like, no, it is absurd.
Yeah.
He's like, no, it's very, and like that was how I started talking. Now me and Chris are like pretty good friends, I think, and everything. But
It's a
like,
good entry
great.
point.
but
for-
yeah,
for
we
the
just
friendship.
like, I just would be like obsessed to talk about talking to him about teaching stand-up.
I have no desire to teach anyone how to do, especially in a formal
Yeah.
class, like a bunch of them. Like,
Yeah, it's
Well,
like,
don't-
we'll
Yeah.
trust any one
If
person.
it was
That would be my
one-on-one,
advice. Don't-
having a little apprentice of sorts, like the not so bad, or just someone you're like, oh, this guy has a lot of potential, or lady, or
like a caddy,
whatever.
Well, that was
caddy
like
that follows you around
my
with your
my
notepad.
friend Katrina worked at a like a rec center in Asheville, and messaged me one time and was like, "Hey, would you or anybody that you know want to like teach a stand up class? Because we're looking for people to do different classes up here, and we'd pay them and blah blah blah." And I was like, "Well, I'm not near Asheville," and so I messaged Cody, and I was just like, "Hey, you're an Asheville comic," and that was before I started like coming up and knew anybody else that was up here. And I was like, "My friend Katrina was asking if anyone would want to do this. Is this something you would want to do?" And he was like, he's very polite as he is. And he was like, "Oh, I appreciate it." But he was like, "I don't even know how I would do that." And I was like, "Oh, you're right. This is so stupid."
But he's extreme though, because I think he's like extra kind of weirdly humble about what
know,
he is.
yeah.
So yeah,
Are we talking about coding it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Cody.
okay,
But yeah, that's. I mean, I don't. Somebody had asked me
Yeah.
once to teach it to kids at a thing, and I was like, that just sounds uncomfortable. Maybe
Yeah.
I could have learned something, and it would have been a good experience. But I'm so short on hours. I'm like, I just want to get stage time. I don't know. if I
Yeah.
wanna,
So over there,
Changes.
which person is which person
no
on
one
the
has ever
bars?
checked the levels. It's the 19th time.
No, right there. The history of us speaking for the last hour or whatever. Who's who in the zoo right there?
I'm definitely the one on the top.
You're speaking loud and frequently, it seems. And who's in the middle?
Ryan, you're speaking loud and frequently.
The monitor
Turned it off.
The monitor just went black.
Oh shit! Okay, who was in the middle one? Can you tell me? I remember what they looked like.
Listen, let me tell you something. Today,
That's enough out of you, Coble.
Today, I messaged Coble and I was like, "Hey, I gotta pick
I just
my."
turned your mic off. So
Yeah,
Alright, cool.
you're done.
You're finished.
I messaged Coble today and was like, "Hey, I gotta pick the kids up. Do you think we can leave Asheville at 2? Is that cool?" And he was like, "Yeah, I think that would work out perfectly." And he was like, "But do you want to message Ryan so that he knows or whatever?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll message Ryan." He's like, "Do you want me to message Ryan so you don't look like a terrible person?" And I was like,
You're like too late.
"It's too late." I was like, I was like, "Does this make me look like a terrible person?"
So what I'm hearing is that Coble's very controlling.
I'm not controlling. I'm just a
the audio
bully.
levels, about the messages.
No, I'm just a bully. I'm not controlling.
He's like, "You're a terrible person. You talk loud and frequently."
It is true. It is the thing that, like, at first I was trying to edit the podcast, and all I would do would just be edit me out because it was too much. But now I'm like editing takes a lot of time, so it's
Yeah.
just I hope
Yeah,
that
Fuck that noise.
but when
you
you
know?
guys come back, I'll be like real quiet. But for now,
You know what?
Shut
let's
the
just,
fuck up.
let's just
This is about
pan
you
the
guys
camera
listening to
this
me.
way. It'll just be us.
Yeah. Yeah, I
you're a
do
great
mess
host.
with. No, yeah, I'm having a good time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You do mess with people. Is that what you were going to say just now?
Me?
Yeah. Am I not looking at
I think
you?
you were saying you're a bully just before.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Coble's a bully.
All right. How am I a bully, Zlata?
You said you were a bully. I didn't say you
Well,
were
I
a bully.
forgot what
You
I was going to
said-
say.
I know. I cut people off.
Yeah, it's definitely all about getting real caffeinated and just talking real fast about exciting stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know if maybe you tend to be a more chill person. Like from what I've heard you say, there's a lot of you kind of like, it's all about like calming yourself on stage because there's a lot of like extra words. And that's kind of how I am. I'm like too much. Whereas maybe you're kind of just more chill. Like,
Yeah, and
you
depressed.
just
and
like to like
everything,
pace
yeah.
the room slowly and hatch evil plans.
Yeah, no,
Evil bully
no.
plans.
I mean, I do think my like resting state of arousal, as far as like just like how jacked up I am.
That was a go back
That's the
to
psychological
the phrase.
term. This is
why you're not allowed to
Resting
talk on the
phrase of
podcast.
arousal.
Arousal.
Physiological arousal. That's what it's called if you're a psychologist.
Arousal.
Okay.
How
Did you go to
aroused
college?
is the
Yeah,
audience?
I studied psychology at Clemson.
I knew it was going to be that. It's all about listening, right? Being a psychologist.
What? What'd you say?
Isn't it all about listening? Like,
Come again?
okay. I don't know.
Coble gets so deadpan and then just like slides into doing bits, and you're like, "Oh, he's being genuine." No, he fucking isn't. No, he's not.
Second time I
Tell
was like,
Ryan
all right.
about me at
Oh
the
my
infamous
God.
question.
When we first started hanging out,
This
I
was
like,
early.
like, very early, and just like we were at Sharky's, like outside of karaoke or whatever, and Coble was just like so genuinely and was like, Zlata, do you think I'd be a good father? Which is such a loaded question to ask someone you don't know. And I'm sitting, I was like, oh,
Breaking
it's
it down from
and,
every
and
angle.
I'm sitting there, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know, I don't like know you so well, but I think that, and I start going with a sincere answer, and then Coble just goes, I was fucking joking. God damn it. Okay.
Yeah.
And you trusted him before.
Yeah, I
that, didn't
trusted
you?
him.
I know how to reel people
did.
in.
I really did. And then I was just like, all right, I'm out. I will never trust you again. Yeah.
It definitely would be a shitty father. I can.
No, that'd be wonderful.
No. You guys said you went to the roast last night? Did you go to the roast? Or not last night?
Coble went.
I went, yeah, Thursday.
I didn't get
yeah.
to go. I wish I could have gone.
I was supposed to do that roast, which I'd love to do the roast, and then I was booked in Atlanta, so I couldn't. And then
He's
I got
big.
to Atlanta
He's
and it-
big time
it
in
got
us.
canceled. Yeah, it was a feature spot at a brewery open mic, so it was,
Yeah.
you know. And then it got canceled, so I didn't get to do the roast. Was it awesome?
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
lot. There were some really good jokes. Derek absolutely crushed, and Cody had some really good jokes. Everyone did well, I
Yeah.
thought, and God, Cody had this. Cody. Bid Gibson was on it, and it was kind of like a little bit of a joke of just like, why are you on the roast? Whatever.
Yeah.
People were doing that to him.
Yeah.
And Cody was like, Ben Gibson's here. What was Tater Tot busy?
That's funny.
And then like dropped his notebook, and God, that had me laughing really hard. A lot of people were giving
That's
Cody
so good.
shit about working at the psychiatric hospital.
Yeah.
And he, after the roast, he was talking to James. He's like, yeah, I wasn't expecting that much about the psychiatric hospital. I've only been working there for like 2 weeks. And yeah, there were like 5
It does
jokes
make a
about
lot of
that.
sense. It's like, oh, yeah.
Derek did a joke about, he's like, I know those patients are like, why does Cody get to leave? Like, why do I have to stay here 24/7? But Cody gets to go home. That's weird. I thought that was funny.
Yeah. I love those. I love the idea of writing a bunch of really mean jokes and then you only say them one time.
Yeah.
I like roasts when it's people that know each other really well and they get to do the more like intimate jokes where they're very like specific because
Yeah.
it's so much better than just like,
Do you look
"Whoa,
like this?
you wear
Celebrities, yeah.
glasses.
Yeah, you said
'Cause you
say
love
it one time, and then if
Yeah.
you do a roast with Ben Jennings, he'll bring those jokes back up like 8 times. I've heard gobble spaghetti said to me about
It was a good
20 times.
roast. The Coble was on a roast where a guy was like, Coble Panetti, more like gobble spaghetti.
And they really have not
That's
let
good.
it go. No,
No,
they,
Ben
they
Jennings
brought
has said that
it,
to me
they brought
20
it up
times since that
repeatedly.
happened. Yeah.
That's what you want is for your roast joke to be repeated. Like,
Yeah.
like to bully that person with that joke, not for just one night, but
Yeah,
for as
just the
long
rest
as
of their
possible.
lives. Yeah.
Yeah, I was on the Funny or Fired that they did all women on it, and I was like kind of disappointed because it was we not all of us like knew each other super well, so that kind of is like an element that takes away from the roasts or whatever. But like 3 of the people on there were like they would like go down the line, and then they would just get to me and they would just be like, no, I like you. And I'd be like, no. And then Jazz went up, and Jazz was talking about me and Mackenzie and was just like, you can just tell by their outfits that they're going through something. Like, it's, just like, it's okay, good.
People should have hit me up.
Yeah, bring them up.
Yeah, Asheville used to be a lot more roasty. Like, there's a guy named Macon Clark who was like the alpha comic, like way before the pandemic, and he was just roasty as shit. So he kind of set the tone, and we used to be like really mean and roasty all the time. It's fun. I love to like watch all the Comedy Central roasts and
Yeah.
just get in the roast mindset, and then like write down like all the things I know about each person, like Cody Psych Ward, whatever, and then see if you can make like a really evil joke out of each one.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
I don't know. That sounds kind of mean.
Well, it's like it's like you love these people, you know?
Yeah.
You're only doing it with people that like you love.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
watching. James and Allison gave my name for the roast, and then I didn't get on it, and I was really sad because I
Yeah.
wanted to be on it. But-
Yeah.
We like 5 or 6 years ago, I think we did a honey roast for Jen, and that was really fun. Where it was like like roasts, but only nice things
Snyder?
about everybody. Yeah, we did a little. It was very sweet. We all dressed up like Jen with like vests and bow ties and stuff, and we all did very nice jokes about each other, and it was very cute because it's like. You just feel so good, and it's just like like I didn't know you can make it funny and like.
Right, I'm
love
sorry I
each
said
other.
you speak loud and frequently.
No,
That
it's
was mean.
all right.
That was
Yeah,
mean.
have I outdone him now? Are you saying sorry because you're just like I should have saved that comment for Zlata?
Oh no! I feel genuinely. He's turning the monitor back on.
It is true. We'll get a little monitor
So,
access.
but
Like,
who
it looks like
is
it's
the
getting-
bottom two? Who are the bottom two?
I mean, I think that you're in the middle and Zlata's on the
okay.
bottom. So
I
it
should be
looks
getting
like
more
Zlata and I are
talking.
like at least maybe I'm still talking the most. It's my podcast and I do most of the talking.
That's all right. 50, 25, 25 seems fair, you know.
Yeah.
He's headlining Coble.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my show.
You start speaking quieter once that's in your
I start to
mind.
like go. Well, it's also like what my what Emily says to me like every day is it's like I can kind of be a lot. I get excited about like talking about drumming or comedy, and that's kind of one of the ideas for the podcast is that there might be other people that could come over and we could just do it for like a couple hours, but like. If you live with me every day, it gets to be.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's how Justin will be. Like he doesn't like say it out loud, but I'll get very excited like talking about what's going on with comedy and what's going on. It's like, and this person did a joke about this and it was so funny. And then we did this and then this person didn't do so good. And he's just like, and so I was saying something to him the other day where I was just like. Yeah, it's like, I know you're just getting tired of me, like talking about comedy all the time. And he was just like, oh, no, no, it's so good.
He couldn't actually
This-
say any
yeah,
like,
it's like-
specific things about what he
He's
liked
like,
about it.
Yeah, this thing that I don't you watch as an audience member or participate in. I love hearing about these people I've never met.
I think Emily likes like the gossip from the scene. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
always good. It's like
I'm so out of the
bunch
loop.
narcissists.
Yeah, I'm so out of the loop about all that shit. I feel like people like will start discussing drama and I'll like not know about it.
Yeah, but it's never
Yeah.
like
I'm
real
the same.
drama though.
I think it's to me like pretty late.
Yeah.
You know.
What's
It's
the new drama happening?
You
Like,
can't do that on a podcast. This
Oh,
is
yeah.
recorded.
I mean, just these like difficult people who have
Yeah.
these clashes and try to get on their sides, and I've managed to like never really be on either side of the drama
Yeah.
so far.
Do you have a recent example?
It's like, but you do want to see it. You know?
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
mean,
yeah.
I want to like help it, but it's also just hilarious.
Yeah.
So just talking about the gossip, I think that's good. But it's more like my ideas about comedy, or even me trying to do. That's where she's kind of like, I
I
don't.
feel
She doesn't
like,
want to hear about me. If I'm
feel
talking
like-
about you guys or something, then she'd be interested.
Yeah.
A lot of the gossip for me is like,
Can you believe that so and so said that they don't like comics that run the light?
and it's like the one comic that goes 2 minutes over every time. It's just,
Can you believe the audacity of this guy? And
it's just like Justin knows like all the lore of like
How
each
Coble just runs the
individual.
mic-
Yeah,
light.
Yeah,
it's
I
like-
run the fucking light.
Coble was being a fucking bully again today.
Yeah.
Just pacing the room.
I'm just pacing around, hatching fucking evil plans and shit. And trying to get people to say things they shouldn't say on podcasts.
No, that's like the very first mic I ever did was like Jen came up to me afterwards and was like really nice and was like, you should come back. And I was like, yeah, this is why I'm going to come back. And then immediately after that, a guy came up to me and was like, hey, I just wanted to tell you that like you did really well. You're really funny for a woman. And I was like, I was like, oh, that stings.
How old
I
was this
like,
person?
He had to have like, he was in his 40s, like for sure. And I was
like my age.
Dude, he was like, and he does like corporate
That's
comedy
bad.
stuff. And that was one of those things where it's like, when I first started doing comedy, I had no concept of the fact that like, oh, this is a community of people. Like all these people know each other and
Yeah.
like come back every week. And
Yeah.
like, they're almost like your coworkers, you know.
Yeah.
It's like you know everything about them, even if you don't hang out with them outside of comedy. Like in my head, it was just all individual people showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And stop looking at the monitor, Coble.
Dude, I can't help it. Sorry.
But yeah, so it was very interesting that was like the first thing that happened, and then people had to be like, "Yeah, there's like the most stereotypical thing that could have been said." And it's just like, cool. Well, I'm glad I got it out of the way because no one said that to me since then. So that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's nice. When's the last time someone told you guys you were very funny for a woman?
Never.
No.
I get introduced a lot where somebody goes, "New next comic," and they look over at me and they've clearly not thought of anything good, and they're like, "He's a dad."
Yeah.
It's like, how many times? I don't like it.
No, I get it.
But you
Doesn't help.
can't put me in a box.
Yeah, it's like, and it just like reveals that they're like, they just look at my face and they go, "Dad," like,
Yeah.
and I'm just like,
Yeah.
"Huh?" After all that
Yeah.
I've shared from my life experiences.
I like
That's
how
what you
Travis
take
brings me
back
up.
from-
Travis just calls me a
A
curly-headed
curly-headed fuck.
and then brings me up. I like that.
Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah,
good.
Ben Jennings always says she's my favorite mom to follow on Facebook. Thanks, Ben. It's like that. I feel like it sets a precedent where it's just like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything about being a mom now.
Yeah, maybe I was going to reveal that like
Yeah.
5 minutes into my set. Now
Yeah.
they've looking at me with.
I'm sorry. Hannibal Buress had this really funny thing about being brought on stage where someone was like, this next guy, you got to really listen to him. And he's like, what the fuck? Like, it's just like such a weird like shit to put in the air before he's like, you got to, he's on some other shit. Like, you got to really listen to him. And I always thought that was really fucking funny. And then Seinfeld has this thing where Louis C.K. brought him up as the greatest stand-up in the world.
Yeah.
I know they talk about that on Talking Funny, that like HBO little
Yeah.
special thing. And it is weird what can happen 60 seconds before you're brought up on stage, how that can influence like how you feel and how the audience feels and everything and what the context. Because it's just like such a strange thing of just like stand-up has very little context whatsoever for like it's you and a microphone, so like outside of like what's happening in the room, what happened before you is like all the context there is. The fact that they came to a show to laugh, like you have to build all the context for your jokes yourself or like build on what's happened, but it's like so little, whereas like, you know, like a comedy TV show, after you've seen 50 episodes or whatever, you have so much context and history built into watching and enjoying the humor, and it can get really meta and very like self-referential, which is a synonym of meta. But stand-up is very low context. You have to like build everything yourself, and I think that's pretty unique.
I hate how like I feel like when you start talking about comedy, there's so much to like talk about opinion wise and like delve into and stuff, and then at the end of it I always just see like it's always just giggles and shits. Like it's just like it's not that deep, and it's like I feel like it's easy to like start analyzing it and then get to the part where it's just like, no, just be funny, like just be funny, like, but it's like, I don't know, you can't give advice. Like I don't know, people don't really like ask me for comedy advice or whatever, but like when they do, I always feel bad because I don't have anything like specific to say. It's like just find what works. And
First long conversation. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
The first long I talked to you at the Odd. I went up and did a set and did pretty well, and that was the first time you ever really talked to me. Was like after that, and we started talking about
you did
just
bad
like
the next time, and I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know this guy at all.
I don't remember
We were talking about like humor theory and like just how it's like when you go on Wikipedia or whatever, and you want to read about like theories of humor and humorists like discussing how humor works and everything like that. It's just a bunch of nerds that really don't know what the fuck is funny a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And
like the benign violation theory or some bullshit like
yeah,
that.
or just like superiority and stuff like that. And it's just it is a mystery because like I don't know. I mean, I think humor predates humanity even. Like there's like seems to be like
explain that immediately. What do you mean humor predates humanity?
Like the modern
what did the
modern okay, do you actually want me to, or you
the dinosaurs were like
no, but I think like modern anatomical humans have only been around for about 200,000 years, and I think humor predates that. Like I think like chimpanzees have a capacity to understand humor on some level. Like they'll play pranks on each other.
What does it do for them? Do you just ease this monkey stress of the...
Well, I think the more
Lowers
social of an
cortisol.
animal you are, the more like you find that in animals. As far as just like, I mean, I think humor brings people together. So any sort of like developed
nope, I try
complex.
to alienate the audience whenever I can. That's
You were
the
talking about
ultimate
how humor
goal.
has to be relatable earlier.
Nope, I think you should go up on
That's part of
stage.
the podcast is you got to be sure to contradict yourself several times.
Exactly.
So when you listen back, that's part of the fun. It's like I felt that was 30 minutes ago when we were talking about that.
That was a
thing.
different time.
I was a different person.
we
then.
were.
That's
That was
encouraged.
pre-Siggy
It's a very
break.
fluid.
Yeah. You gotta have no standing beliefs about the thing that you
No
do.
That's why Bill
Convictions.
Hicks was the greatest. I think you should always be like, fuck you to the audience first and foremost. You know, especially if they paid and it's like it's supposed to be a clean show. You should like really.
But do y'all think y'all actually have to be relatable? Like, do you try to be relatable for the most part, or?
I mean, it's interesting what you were saying about. There's something you said in there, like, because I got to go on the road and do a few things recently, and I was really looking at my jokes, being like, instead of doing like what are my best jokes, I think, what are the jokes that like introduce me to them?
Yeah,
and that kind of, and it's like the thing that's come up on this podcast. Another theme is that multiple people say, well, you got to be an outsider, you got to be some crazy. And I was like, whoa, I see that now. I never thought of it that way. And I guess, scanning as too much of like a generic cis white dad or whatever, I think can be like something that holds me back. So I think I am kind of trying to look at more like, how can I relate to them in a way that still is unique?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of a long-winded stab at it. Like, but I do think you have to relate. But I mean, like Stephen Wright, I mean, relating can just be like, I'm a weirdo from another planet with strange thoughts. Like there's so many ways to get there.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like,
I don't think you
every day.
necessarily should like go into it being like, okay, my goal is to be the most relatable person to the audience. I think it's just like with certain jokes, you should make it at least understandable to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be.
They should know what the fuck you're talking about.
Right. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be an experience that they have, but it should be something where they can be like, just turn the monitor back off.
Yeah, I've never
There's
seen you
multiple-
this insecure about something, right? You hate me looking at these levels.
I need to know it didn't.
I didn't
stop
even know you
recording.
could feel insecurity until today. You just seem so confident.
I have a
and-
plug-in that'll take you out entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah. This
You are regretting me. You're like,
between
God, I
me
should have gotten
Ryan."
Zlata and Mackenzie to come. Why the fuck did I bring Coble up?
We'll call Mackenzie right now.
I would love to talk to Mackenzie. I don't really know her at all yet, but
you should get to know her. She's great.
So
Yeah, big fan.
funny,
I think-
and she's just like, dude, she's so just like immediately talented.
She's one of those
and
people.
like
She's one of those
she
people that
gets
makes you want to
it.
quit.
It's really it's so nice to see someone who just like. I don't know that she could like articulate
She can.
why it's funny all the time, but it's just like she just gets it. She's like, no, this wouldn't work with this, you know, the way I said it, or like I'm gonna change it to this, and she'll just do it, and it just like her instincts are so fucking good. Like she just has good instincts about it. It's really nice.
Good instinct.
I think she is articulate about when I've like talked to her about just like writing jokes together and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and then like critiquing other people's sets or jokes or whatever. I think she knows her
we
shit.
don't really talk about it. That we just are goofy little babies when we hang out. We don't spend a lot of time doing the.
Yeah.
But you can still get a sense of it. I'm checking my slacks real quick here. But yeah, I would love to talk to her. She's definitely got. I mean, there's been a few people here like that come along after you that figure it out so quick. And I think what I've noticed, seeing it happen in different waves in Asheville, is that like everybody that's like a year in that's not getting on shows compares himself to that one person that came in during their year that's getting on, that's figured it out quick. And you shouldn't do that because most of us like don't. I think it's. I don't.
You should get on shows when you're ready.
Like Jess and Moira were
yeah.
two people like that. They started like about a year after me, and it's like a few months in, it was like just what you described with Mackenzie, where it's like, wow, this
Yeah.
person really just
Both of those people are
understands
really
how to fucking be hilarious. They're a character from another. They're an outsider, but then they also have like great writing, and it's just like. You just see them like come up after you, and you're like, God damn it! I'm so slow at this. This is taking me so long.
But the thing is, it's like it's very
was
rarely that like. I guess with some people it's like, okay, that person's just not funny, but like I really feel like more often than not with newer comics, it's like it's not that you're not funny, it's that you're like not ready to be on a show yet. It's like it's not just about having a funny idea. It's about like being consistent and timing and stage presence and knowing how far away to hold a microphone from your mouth.
I still struggle with that sometimes.
Yeah,
Sometimes
some
I
people
yell
would
right into the
say,
mic.
Yeah, you're not
It
aware.
takes
You're not
8
aware of the
years.
room yet, and
Yeah.
you're also not aware of like how you're coming off. Like they don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Right. And I mean, and a lot of times I feel like the people that are like, well, why haven't I started? Like the problem is that like you'll see people come in that are like really good immediately and they start getting booked on shows like 2 months in. And then all the people who have been doing it for like 6 and 7 months are all of a sudden like, oh, like I haven't been, it's like, that's
Yeah.
normal. It's
Yeah.
so normal to not be on a booked show yet.
Yeah.
Like that's normal. Like they're the exception.
Yeah, you're comparing
you know-
yourself to that 1% or
Right.
whatever percentage it is. Yeah.
I don't even know why I continued to do comedy whenever I started. Like, I was so bad. Like, I remember when I came back up to Asheville some after the pandemic, people would be like, oh, I remember you. I'd be like, fuck! God damn it. I wish you did not remember me before the pandemic because I was not good at comedy. And it took me a while. I was like so bad with like stage presence.
Same for me. I mean, I still think that I feel that way about myself.
Yeah. Do you ever post clips on like stand up Reddit or anything like that?
No. I only started posting any clips like in the last year.
Okay.
And just on like Instagram or Facebook.
That's the other thing. I feel that's the other thing where it's like I was talking about like feeling
Yeah.
superstitious.
Oh yeah, we got to wrap up in a minute, but you
Yeah.
should keep going.
Yeah, I feel like anytime that I've like whipped my phone out and been like, I'm going to record this set, it's either just like dog shit
Yeah.
or just like the sound quality is so bad. And,
Yeah, I think it's all about you got to just record all of them. I think
Yeah,
that's
that's
helped me.
just-
It's like I don't drink anymore because like for me, I realized like 0 is lot easier than one. You
Yeah.
know? And with recording, it's the same way. It's like
Yeah.
if I just am like trying to, but then when she's like, I just do it every time, then it
just
helps.
feels bad.
But then I
'cause
still
it's
don't
like,
have a lot of sets.
Do you
I
read
like. I'll
comments?
feel good about a set, and then I'll watch it and be like, oh.
I feel like people
Comments?
will want to
Comments.
like the
Like
comments on the
video.
reels.
I don't really get a lot of comments.
Yeah,
I
that's-
mean, it's not like there's some giant,
Yeah.
controversial thread where everybody's like, "Fuck this guy." I haven't
It's-
had any issues with that.
It's almost that feeling of just like the first insecurity is like, what if everybody hates me? And then the second insecurity is like, what if nobody even cares enough to hate me?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's like you thought we were going to hate you. We didn't even look at this.
We don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
That's like after I did comedy for like a year at that time, like I got to know some of the more senior meaning comics, and they were like, "Oh, you're a dad?" And I'm like, "I've been saying that on stage,
Yeah,
every
yeah.
week
yeah.
for
Yeah.
years. Nobody even
Awkward.
heard anything.
Yeah.
They don't even still don't
Yeah.
know my name or anything."
That makes it feel good about like when you're worried about bombing in front of people though, because it's just like they were smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
They,
Yeah.
no one
Thinking
I
about
cared about
themselves.
saw this. Yeah.
When they said good set to you, they weren't thinking about
Yeah.
you. They didn't watch your set.
But comments on like reels and stuff like that, like you have people that are like mean, and then you have people that are like very nice, and then you have the people that are just like going out of their way to be like as accurate as possible about their critique.
Yeah.
And that shit hurts, dude. I've only had like one video like blow up a decent amount, and it got some comments and stuff, and people were being nice. And then one person, I'm going to read this. If
Yeah.
it's okay. It's my the astrology joke I do about. Have you heard that one?
I think so.
Yeah. It's where like the girl is like, I did the math on this pregnancy, so I'm gonna have an abortion because I don't want a Scorpio for a baby or whatever. And someone commented, "It's cute, not super funny in my opinion, but very cleverly articulated and well constructed. I'm thinking delivery may need some work. I think if an A-list comedian delivered this, it would definitely kill. You've got the comedic chops writing wise. The stage presence needs some work in my opinion. Then again, I'm just a comedy enthusiast. I don't have much stand-up experience."
I love that they were like, if somebody else who wasn't you said this joke,
Spot on, by the way, too.
Exactly. It
You
hurt.
tried yelling it in a funny voice, with the.
Ryan's over there like minimizing his Reddit so you don't see it.
Yeah, that was me.
Cool. Well, should we wrap up on that? It's like
Yeah.
almost 2. So
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
do
that's
it.
that
fun.
was a long, and
Well, thank you for
awesome,
having us,
Yeah,
buddy.
fun
thanks,
time.
Ryan.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.